give you strife. He's Todd. He's tall, he's mean, he's labeling machine. He's Todd. Rides a motorbike, he'll tell you what it's like. He's Todd. Don't know what he'll say, he'll scare the kids away. He's Todd. He's Todd.
Technology. So anyway, I was watching the countdown, and I hope I didn't appear earlier, and you all saw that faux pas. We're trying this new platform, LinkedIn Live. And so it's kind of complicated. Let's put it that way. It's like my life. It's a little complicated. So thanks for joining us. Episode 18, I think. 18, 19, something like that. Outside plant. And so it's not the most exciting thing to talk about, but it's still part of what we all do out there in the low voltage and even electrical world. So we're going to talk a little bit about labeling that as well. I hope everybody's well. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please let us know in the chat session. You can always reach out to me for some bad advice. I'm full of that. So, contact me directly on that. So here we are again, bi-weekly on LinkedIn Live. Thanks for showing up. Outside plant. So I've done a couple of things with the studio. All right, I've readjusted the studio. I just built a fully functional 7x19 rack. I want to thank RXL for providing the cable management and the metals, and I want to thank Westcal for the Leviton angled patch panel. That is very important, and that's coming up next the second episode. Anyway, it's coming up. All right. We've got some modular patch panels. I even have a ground bar here because that's very important. So on an upcoming episode, we're going to basically label this thing from head to toe. I haven't done that in a long time, so tune in. It should be damn funny. All right. Next week, we're going to talk about some new products, but you know what? Let's get right into it with Outside Plant. Outside Plant is actually part of the ANSI TIA 606C platform. It's actually been part of the 606C platforms for quite some time. And because you're talking about long distances, labeling is even more important. You know, you've got 2,500 feet maximum between your hand holes and your manholes and your pull holes or your pedestals and stuff like that. So it's very important to know from point A to point B, where. And I want to thank Mr. Sam Morse, by the way. Mr. Sam Morse for my active electronics here. I've got a server. I've got a router. We're going to show you how to label that. So I appreciate the reminder. Softtech maintenance up in Fort Collins, Colorado. So anyway, it's very important to label both ends, obviously, especially if you're troubleshooting. Now, I did a little PowerPoint here. I detest PowerPoints. We're going to go through this PowerPoint. But the main thing about Ware Brother, I think, is the best solution for outside plant labeling is the durability of the labels. Every label we make, except for our TZEN 201 Super Narrow, which is going to be used on that angle patch panel, and our heat shrink is laminated. So it's going to be scratch resistant, scuff resistant, oil resistant, gas resistant, caustic resistant, fade resistant, UL rated. Yeah, I know I'm forgetting something, but it's a tough-ass label, all right? Now, I'm going to show you these, and from a legal disclaimer, all I'm going to tell you is that these have been in here a long time. I'm not going to tell you how long they've been in here, but these, I got a flag label in here. I've got a cable wrap. This has been in water for a really long time. This particular one has been in oil for a long time. And again, I'm not going to say how long they've been in there, but the whole point behind me showing you that is the durability of the label. Because when you're talking about direct burial, when you're talking about aerial, when you're talking about stuff going through conduits, you got condensation, you got heat, you got the cold, you got all sorts of stuff that is not really good for the labels. So using our laminated labels is key to outside plant because you want it to weather the weather, if you will. I'm going to go through a short presentation. This share screen stuff is kind of wonky, but we'll walk through it real quickly. And again, if there's any questions, comments, concerns, or otherwise, I can actually see the chat. I'm not going to answer you, but I'll get back to it later because I can't multitask well. I can't sit here and talk and type and chew bubblegum and walk and stuff like that. So here we go. I'm going to try and share my screen here. Let me know. Hopefully this works. All right, let me bring this up. I'm going to go into presentation mode. All right, so outside plant labeling with me, Todd Morse. So here's some of your basic components of outside plant labeling, and I got a couple pretty little pictures down there. But you got cables going through the manholes and pull holes and long haul, but eventually you're going to get to the entrance facility of the building. All right. You got your demarcation point or your SDP, your service delivery point out there. Labeling ducts, conduits, raceways, labeling your racks and cabinets. Eventually these trunk cables. Boy, man, I'm going old school now, but these trunk cables are going to end up somewhere, and they're going to end up in active or passive electronics, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. You're talking about aerial, you're talking about direct burial, and then again, we talked about conduits again. So those cables should be labeled. Now, 606C doesn't really go into, a whole lot of thou shouts and blah, 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 but it's just a good idea to label everything. And I do mean everything. Hey, daddy needs a new pair of shoes. So label everything, all right? Access points, and this is very important. Your manholes, your pull holes, your handhelds, and even your pedestals. You can see there's an example of a pedestal there. Your active and passive devices. As an example right here, I've got patch panels, I've got fiber LIUs, I've got active electronics. Very important to label those and identify those as well. All right. Your cabling, obviously, you want to label the cable. Sometimes you got fiber going in, you got copper going in. Label all that. Label the breakouts. Label everything you can. Again, if you don't, there's a potential that it could come back to haunt you later, or the next contractor, if you will. But at the end of the day, the end user, the customer pays for it. So you want to be able to identify everything very quickly. Fire stopping. A lot of people don't think about fire stopping. You got your entrance facility coming into the building, and then you got your trunks coming into your IDF, MDF, MTC. I don't even know what they call it these days. It's been a long time. But anyway, that just shows you how old school I am. And your records. Records is very, very, very important. And records is a big part of the 606C or the 606. Again, it's very important to keep records on this as well. Next slide, Todd. Next slide, Todd. No, not that slide, Todd. All right. So here's a little bit of the standard. And again, there's not a whole lot in there, but it incorporates Class 3 and Class 4. As we all should know by now, ANSI TIA 606, whether it be, the original 606 or even now C, there are classes of identifiers in there. So outside plant incorporates Class 3 and Class 4 identification. And it's typically, if you're running OSP, you're basically connecting buildings. All right. So you've got both these classes involved here. And by the way, if you need any more information or if you want to view this PowerPoint, reach out to me directly and we'll show you some contact information on the end there. Next slide, Todd. All right. Here's all the verbiage. Here's the blah, blah, blah about it. All right. Your outside plant and pathway identifiers, all right? And there's some examples, starting with the LAX1. These are just examples of samples of how these should be labeling based upon the label scheme that your customer hopefully has provided. And again, these identifiers mean something. And those that know the 606C standard are going to recognize that these things means something. There's some alternate label formats, and again, you can dive into the different sections. The section 4.6 allows for the use of direct link to an identifier within the records using a printed label with a short and simple numeric code or machine readable. Now, let's stop at machine readable. So machine readable, it basically means you can't use a Sharpie, all right? You can't use duct tape. Now, some still do, but you really shouldn't do it, all right? It needs to be machine generated, all right? I highly recommend using some type of laminate over it. Again, brother tape is all laminated, so you don't need to worry about the elements, if you will. What you do need to think about, though, is brother has a couple of different types of adhesive on the actual tape itself. We have our standard adhesive, which is great for smooth, flat surfaces. Then we have our extra strength. So I'm taking a look at this rack here, and this rack has got a powder coating on it. And so what I want to use on, let's say, this powder coating, or let's say a pedestal, let's say you have a pedestal that is not completely smooth, use our extra strength. The extra strength is actually a softer adhesive that gets inside those little micro nooks and crannies, and it's going to help that label stay on. So keep that in mind, and I've got more information if you need on that. Next slide, Todd. Here's some more of the verbiage from the previous slide, all right? And it goes into, the type of label to be used, human readable. So obviously, my writing is not human readable. It's not legible by any human out there. So again, you want a machine generated label. Colors, all right. Using colors is recommended, but it's not required. And they've been going through this color stuff for years and years and years and years. And again, it's not required, but it is recommended. And if you want to identify these cables, if you will, or pathways easier, there is a chart on what they recommend as far as colors. I don't think I included it in here because I've only got a half an hour with this stuff. But if you need more information on the colors, that is available, or you can obviously Google it yourself. I personally recommend colors, if you will. Again, it just makes it easier to identify. And if it's included in the records, that's even more important. Next slide, Todd. Speaking of Bixie, all right, so for a while now, we do have accreditations up there. It's on brothermobilesolutions.com. If you click on the Datacom portion of it, or even the electrical, and scroll down, there is a way that you now can go to our website and get some accreditations. You're going to have to listen to this voice for a little over an hour. Can you imagine that? Oh my gosh. My poor wife has to put up with this. But anyway, it is available. We offer 2 CECs. It's a basic course on 606C, some of the new upgrades, some of the new terminology. The big thing about C is there's a big change in the terminology as far as the TGBs and, what they call it. I went through earlier the IDFs and the MTCs and the blah, 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 blah. They change those all the time, and there's been a few more changes. So obviously, if you need some CECs, please go to brothermobilesolutions.com. Speaking of that, we got Bixie coming up. And so the virtual Bixie, I went to our booth the other day, and it's just weird. It's just so weird. So I guess what we do is we kind of sit until you all come in the room and you have a question, and then you can ping us. And I know there's a way that we can actually do a live demo on there. We tried it the other day. And so if you need to see the product, or if you just have to see this mug, there is a way you can dial in, and we can have somewhat of a conference here. Those of you that see me at Bixie every year, either in Orlando or Vegas, please stop by the Brother booth. All right, and say hi. Give me a ration like you normally do, and but I'm on certain times and whatnot. We do have some new products available. We're going to show you. I'm also going to expand on that in the next episode as well. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen here, and let me do escape, and let me do See, I'm only using one screen, and it's been advised to me to use 2 screens, and man, I'm just not that smart. I have trouble using this screen right here. So again, outside plant labeling, we have a couple of different methods that you can use for outside plants. Getting back on topic here. I recommend using at least a 1-inch tape. It's for either your cable wraps or your conduit identifiers, anything that you have to look at a distance. And so the PTE 550W, which is this guy right here, is a great machine for that. And one of the reasons why I say it's a great machine to use is that you can upload a database of an Excel spreadsheet that you previously done into the machine. And so when the folks are out in the field, and again, a lot of times OSP is done way out in the middle of nowhere. All right. And so with that machine fully loaded with an Excel spreadsheet, the guys can just go down and print off that Excel spreadsheet versus doing everything like this. Now, we do have the manual machines. You know, we've got the PT. I wouldn't recommend the PTE 110, this little guy right here. It's great for face plates and this and that. But again, I'd at least start at the PTE 300. But my recommendation for, let's say, outside plant, because you are in remote locations, is going to be to use the PTE 550W. Now, we also have, if you need a larger tape, if you need a 1.5-inch tape, which is this guy right here, then I would recommend using the PTE 800W, which is a desktop printer with a removable keyboard that you can also upload a Excel spreadsheet, which again, the folks out in the field are pulling that information from the Excel spreadsheet and they're printing directly onto whatever surface it may be, the manhole, the conduits, so forth and whatnot. Coming inside, if you will, you can still use the PTE 550 for all of your active and passive electronics. And the way that this works out is you can dump different files into the PTE 550. So you may want to put a file for the outside, you know, OSP, have a file called OSP, and everything that you're going to do. Now, it's not unlimited. All right. You can get up to 8,000 labels into either the PTE 550 or the PTE 800W. That's a lot of labels, but maybe mark one file that you dump into either one of these machines as OSP. Another thing you may want to consider is have a separate folder for everything inside, which is going to include your penetrations, your fire stopping, your grounding in some cases, right? And then when you come into the rack, or let's say the demarcation point, you can label that demarcation point, again, with the PTE 550W. As far as the tapes are concerned, we talked a little bit about regular strength. We talked about our standard adhesive. We talked a little bit about do you ever have one of those days? All right. So the extra strength adhesive, man, I'm telling you. Anyway, that applies to anything you're doing out there. So if you have some rough conduit, use the extra strength. Any rough surface, you want to use the extra strength. Now, the extra strength does go both ways. So to make your life easier, if you just want to use the extra strength on anything, that will work as well. For cable wraps, and this is important, anything round. So let's say it could be a duct, could be a conduit. You need to use our FX tape, the TZE FX tape, and it's very clearly identified in this package right here. So the color of the package identifies this as an FX tape. The FX tape is made for curved or round surfaces. I will tell you, if you try and use our standard adhesive or extra strength adhesive on a flat surface, chances are it's going to delaminate. And the reason why it's going to delaminate is that it has a memory for a flat surface. If you take that and you put it on something round, it's going to want to go flat. It's going to want to spring up, and it will delaminate, and you got the chance of that label coming off. So you've been forewarned. Don't come back to me and say you've never been warned about this. Most of the labeling companies out there do the same thing. We're not alone in that. Our competitors have different types of tapes for these round or curved applications as well. So don't forget about the FX tape. The FX tape starts, as far as size-wise, in a 3/8 inch. You move up to a 1/2 inch. You go to 3/4. This one in my hand is a TZE FX 251. It is a 24 millimeter or 1 inch tape. We also do have a 1.5 inch. So let's say you're doing conduits up in the air. You want something that can be read from a little further up. You may want to consider this the 1.5 inch tape. The PTE 500 only accepts tape up to 24 millimeter or 1 inch. If you do want to go above and beyond that, you either have to use our PTE 800 or the PTP 900 desktop series, which is this guy right here. Unfortunately, unless you're going to use a laptop wherever you're working, this needs to be tethered to a laptop. Whereas the PTE 800W, it's got a lithium-ion battery, and I can get about 18 hours of use out of a full charge on that. So there's another option there as well. What have I forgotten here? Oh, man. Hey, I'm telling you, unscripted, unrehearsed, and sometimes a little unprofessional. So, with that being said, again, if you have any questions, reach out to us. You know, we're talking about 10:22 a.m. here, California time. I really think that I've covered everything so far. Again, if there's any other questions, please let me know. Also, you know, one of the things, because this LinkedIn Live stuff is still a little bit wonky, give me any type of suggestions you have. The recorded version on this is going to stay up on, yes, sir, coffee. It's going to stay up on the actual episode page. You have to be an attendee of this to go back and take a look at it. So, Sam, there was your problem right there, is that you weren't attending my episode, my own flesh and blood, not attending my episode. And he's griping at me because he can't find it. So if you were an attendee of this episode, you can always go back. You can watch this. We're going to look at other platforms as far as recording these and putting them up on brothermobilesolutions.com. Right now, we have up to episode 15 on brothermobilesolutions.com. Last week's episode was on asset management. I heard it was a really good episode. We're going to try and get that up there if we can. If not, last week's episode is going to be found on last week's episode's page within LinkedIn Live. So please let me know how this is doing, how this LinkedIn Live is doing, if you will. Any suggestions, comments, or concerns, please let us know. What we're going to do now, I think, is Kelly's going to show you what we have in store for the next couple of episodes. So next, I keep saying next week because we used to do this every week. So it's bi-weekly now. So on October 8th, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about new product overview. We got some really, really exciting products. All right. Name enclosure, typical label. So Mr. Andy's throwing a question in here. Show using... No, Andy, I'm not going to do that. So anyway, October 8th, new product overview. We have some new flags coming out. They will be at the virtual Bixby booth if anyone's going to that. There'll be an area where you can go view that. I think I've got to shoot a video this week on some of the attributes of the new products, but we got some great flags coming up. We have self-laminating tape. Man, I am not a fan of self-laminating tape. I'm telling you right now. But we got some coming out. And the reason why we have some coming out is there's still so many specs out there that are calling for self-laminating tape. These old geezers are speccing this stuff in, and because I think they don't know better. You know, everything we do is laminated. Everything Brother does, except for the TZE N201 and our heat shrink, is going to be laminated. But there's still all these specs out there that are calling for self-laminating tape, which is at, the 8.5 by 11 sheets, and they've got the little printable area followed by the clear tail and blah, 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 blah. Anyway, those are coming out as well. The new flags are pretty exciting. I'm not a big fan of flags. I am a new fan of these flags coming out. And then we've got phenolic tags coming out. We're getting into different parts of the labeling world that we haven't been able to get into previously. I keep teasing you with these phenolics, but they're really, really, really close. That's all I'm going to say. So we'll go through some of that as well. October 22nd, labeling a rack from top to bottom. You're going to see how much weight I put on. All right. Right now, everything's hiding this. But when I actually stand up, and I'm going to show you from top to bottom, it's hard for you to see this, but I've got a ladder rack sitting up there and a couple of LIUs. And so I'm going to go from top to bottom on rack labeling, LIU identification, labeling a high density patch panel. That's going to be really interesting. Tune in for that one. A modular patch panel. I'm going to show you how to do active and passive electronics. Hopefully I'll have a fire stop in by then. I can show you a little fire stop. I'll show you how to label your grounding, your bonding, and the actual rack itself. So tune in for that, please. I appreciate your input. Kelly, if you could show everybody how they can contact us. So there's my information. Most of you on here know me. I'm Todd.Morse at brother.com. There's my phone number. We got Mr. Jamie Brookover, my counterpart in Virginia Beach, who unfortunately couldn't make the show today. Normally, I've got Jamie come on to show the amount of hair growth after he started his Rogaine regimen. It's horrible. Yeah, but anyway, hopefully Curly will be back next week. Mr. Dan Cobb, you heard Dan at the beginning of the show here sing the BS with Todd theme. Dan hails out of Wisconsin, I believe. Muskokie, Galoki, or anyway, he's in Wisconsin. Mr. Bruce Page, again, another counterpart out on the East Coast. Mr. Robert Dawkins, who specializes in warehousing and MRO. If you have any needs for warehousing and manufacturing in the MRO space, deal with Rob. Dan also deals with MRO. And then we've got Mr. Craig Robinson. I've known this man for 20 years, and he is our glorious leader. He hails out of the Bradenton, Sarasota area in Florida. If you do need to contact us with anything, we have a plethora of information available. We can help guide you to where these videos are. We can help guide you to where the Bixie CECs are. Please reach out. Let us know. Your suggestions are greatly appreciated. If you do have any suggestions for future episodes, let us know. I've got a couple lined out, but I can always use suggestions as well. With that being said, it's 10:29, and I'm surprised I took up the whole half an hour. A lot of banter and losing my train of thought, but hell, I'm getting old. It's to be expected. And with that being said, I thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you October 8th. So have yourself a blessed week. Todd out.